So hey class, so my name is Claudio Gratton. I'm going to be one of your instructors for this semester. I'm a professor in the Department of Entomology. I've been here since 2003 at the University of Wisconsin. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in a small town in Illinois where my father was also an academic in the field of physics. I went in a different direction compared to him. But I actually was born and grew up for many years in Italy, which is my other home country. I spent a lot of years rambling around the countryside at my grandparents' farm. My grandfather and my grandmother had a small little vineyard, and my brother and I would play out in the vineyard almost every summer from when the weather was good to, from sunrise to sunset every night. And we still go back and visit quite a lot, and I have a lot of affinity and connections to my family that's still there and to the culture. And needless to say, food and rituals and activities associated with food are an important part of, have been an important part of my family and my family culture. My own background actually did not start in agriculture, though, in academic background. I was very interested in plant-insect interactions. How do plants and insects evolve in response to each other? Eventually, I started looking at how predators that feed on herbivorous insects might actually be interacting with the plants indirectly. So I became very interested in groups that sometimes we refer to as natural enemies. These are the naturally occurring predators and parasites, or in entomological circles, parasitoids, of things that eat plants. Once I got here to Wisconsin, I started hanging out with my colleague and a friend, Randy Jackson, who I co-teach the class with, and with Michael Bell. We were brought together here as part of a cluster hire in agroecology, and the irony of it is that I had never actually worked in agriculture before I got to Wisconsin. But in living and working in Wisconsin, I gained an appreciation for the history of agriculture here, the diversity of the landscape, and I started working more and more at the interface between insects, plant-insect interactions, and agricultural landscapes. One of the things that we started learning very early on in the work that we did in our group is that the capacity for these natural enemies, predators like lady beetles, to feed on herbivorous insects is in large part determined by what else is around in the landscape. And this is because lady beetles and other natural enemies are mobile. They live part of their lives in natural parts of the landscape, like these prairies that we see here, that have lots of food for them to feed on, lots of other herbivores feeding on plants. But they're generalists, and so they will move from areas like this into agricultural habitats, like these cornfields that we see in the background right here, to feed on other food items, to feed on herbivores that are feeding on those crops. And the herbivores that feed on those crops are things that actually matter to people, things that are pests of our crops. And so as I was getting more and more interested in insects and insect conservation and the conservation of these predator-prey relationships, it was impossible not to think about how agriculture affects them, and therefore how people actually can shape our landscapes and therefore affect the conservation of wildlife and insects. And that conservation actually has an impact on how agriculture works. If we lose these natural enemies, there's the potential that we actually have to substitute their role by other means, maybe by using pesticides and so on. So the perspective that I bring to this class is one about thinking about the ecology of organisms in diverse landscapes. How do we create this multifunctionality that we're looking for, where we can get not only food for us to eat, not only viable farming operations for farmers, but how do we maintain the natural ecological functions that actually enable these agricultural systems to work in the first place? And again, my focus has been on the interface between biodiversity conservation and agriculture. But the more I work on it, the more I realize that this is inextricably woven into the people in the landscape as well.